Hello and welcome to day 3 of Liverpool Fashion Summit 2021. Today we will be focusing on sustainability and we have a great guest speaker to start the day, Deirdre, Professor in Marketing and Consumer Research at the University of Glasgow, Adam Smith Business School. Welcome, Deirdre, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Julia, for that welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today around sustainability and fashion.
Could you tell us a bit about your research area?
Yeah, absolutely. My research area is around consumption ethics. I guess I've been researching that area right through my academic career. My PhD was focused on consumption ethics and predominantly focused on fair trade. But I'm interested in the kind of broader picture around sustainability and ethics. So at the moment, I'm working on research around modern day slavery, around circularity and clothing, and also around equality and sustainability, looking at communities for whom this is much more of a challenging kind of issue. I'm a consumer researcher, so my focus is always coming from a consumer citizen perspective.
Well, I think it's great because, well, this year's edition, we're really focusing on the role of consumers. And, well, going to one of your latest studies in collaboration with Save Your Wardrobe, you proved that the lockdown offered an extra time to reflect on consumption behaviors. But at the same time, e-commerce has incredibly risen during these days. Obviously, we have changed the way we consume and the way we buy, but do you think this pandemic effect will last and we will remain sustainable consumers?
Well, I like to be optimistic, obviously. I think the pandemic's been really interesting in the sense that it's highlighted some of the worst in brand behaviour. I mean, we've seen the non-payment of factory orders in Bangladesh to the exposés of factories in Leicester during the COVID lockdowns. And in the case of Leicester, you know, despite this, we've seen sales of Boohoo products increasing. We had the £1 bikini from a similar retailer, Misguided, and Black Friday kind of crazy prices from Boohoo as well. So we've seen an increase in kind of online shopping, and I think it's also important to think about the impact of that in terms of transportation and packaging and people ordering multiple items to see what fits or what they might want, and that some of those retailers don't repackage those items back for sale, which then generates further waste. And in our research, we found that such shopping tends to be not very mindful because people do it when they're bored or in between tasks, maybe in the bath, in bed even, just scrolling through shopping apps and then seeing things and then just kind of ordering them. And the physical high street, I think, is going to look quite different when we come out of this pandemic as well. We see large named retailers that aren't going to be there anymore. And for me, I'd love to see this as an opportunity to really rethink our high streets and make them more interesting and individualized again, rather than the homogenous brands that you saw wherever you went in the country. And it was really boring, to be quite honest. So I'd love to see the opportunity taken for these empty units to be used by social enterprises, alternative business models, repair cafes, pop-ups, things like that, that would really increase the vibrancy and the diversity of our high street. So I'd like to be optimistic and think that the pandemic really creates an opportunity for us to rethink what we have currently. And I guess the other interesting thing about the pandemic was that things that were previously considered impossible became possible because it was considered an emergency. And in terms of climate, we are in an emergency as well. And I'd really like to see this situation treated as such, where we really just start to strip back and rethink what we're doing and the structures that are around that.
I really hope so. Especially because the future doesn't look bright if we don't start changing drastically. And going back to that study, so Save Your Wardrobe, it's an app that allows to upload your garments, and these platforms and especially social media have become like key element of our lives. And do you think they are the enablers of social change right now? Are we going to change the world through social media, or we'll also stay offline?
Well, I mean, I can speak from the perspective of Save Your Wardrobe that we've been working with my colleague, Dr. Kat Duffy, also at Glasgow University. So we've been working with Save Your Wardrobe since the point at which they were testing the app. So we've been following their users from testing the app right through to their continual development of the app. So it's actually been really interesting, quite exciting project in that respect. And our last wave of data collection was actually during the lockdown. So what we found, it was interesting, while paradoxically people were wearing significantly less of the items in their wardrobe, the kind of stop that the lockdown imposed, particularly at the beginning where everything just suddenly came to a standstill, actually allowed people time to kind of, not everybody, but allowed people time to sort of stop and kind of reflect on what they were doing, and to kind of organize and sort of reimagine their wardrobes, but also to become more connected with the things that they already had, and much more of an emotional connection, and become more mentally engaged with their clothing. So this kind of stop sort of also resulted in a kind of more conscious reflection of the impact of their clothing consumption, because people started to think about their actual clothing needs. And as they started on that journey, then they really wanted to kind of sustain that initial kind of awareness that had been created. And this work with Save Your Wardrobe very much echoed earlier research that Kat and I had engaged with, where we followed mainstream consumers of clothing, and we asked them to indulge us in a behaviour change to be more sustainable. And we used mindfulness as an intervention to support them in that. And again, what we found was that we almost, the project had, the research had given people permission to kind of stop and reflect. And that was really, really important. Just that craziness of our lives, and it's so quick, and we just keep doing things habitually, that intervention, and this is what Save Your Wardrobe's kind of like as well, it's an intervention which is interrupting what you're doing and giving permission to people to actually stop, was quite powerful in that sense. And it also provided a support mechanism. So Save Your Wardrobe, the app, provides the support mechanism to support people to make that change and to think about what they have. In our research, our support mechanism we had provided was around mindfulness as an intervention. So again, there was a kind of framework there to kind of support what was actually going on. So while I think Save Your Wardrobe users aren't necessarily reflective of all that was going on during the pandemic, because we did see the increase in sales with organisations like Boohoo, but those who were engaging with the app, it did provide a kind of mechanism for them to really think about what they were doing. And the app is very much built around mindfulness and sustainability. And the idea is very much built around to use what you have already own more effectively. So the most sustainable clothing is the clothing that we already own. And we know that a lot of that clothing in people's wardrobe is sitting unused. And what the Save Your Wardrobe app wants to do is really unlock the potential of all of that unused clothing that we already have, and help people to utilize that more effectively. And you know, I said about people talking about, and we found this in their research about, you know, just shopping through apps while they're in their bed or in the bath. Some people described how they shop through their own wardrobe through the Save Your Wardrobe app. So rather than shopping on a shopping app, you know, you can shop your own wardrobe, because once you've uploaded all of those items, then you've got them there to kind of look through. And one of the things that I found really interesting from the research was that I wondered if a barrier to the app would be all of the effort involved in actually uploading your wardrobe. But what was really interesting was that people actually embraced that task. And that task became really important in reconnecting with the things that you already had. You know, you forgot that you owned some of these items. People really wanted to then build their kind of ideal sustainable wardrobe. So they really then started to think about that. And you had mentioned about the role of kind of social media and that kind of aesthetic. And I think that that is quite important, that people wanted to photograph their clothing in a way that it was appealing, so that when they are building outfits or scrolling through, that it does look at that does look attractive. So that actual process of uploading the items meant that people reconnected with their clothing. They started to see what they already had. There was also an opportunity to start to move things on that they perhaps didn't want anymore, but there was a lot of rediscovery of things that they had forgotten that they actually owned. And there was a real desire to then use this as an opportunity to kind of build your ideal wardrobe, a wardrobe that you actually want to own. And I think once people go to all of that effort to create that, then you're quite mindful about when you reintroduce something into that. And we found that in our previous research as well, where some people wanted to declutter their wardrobes, and we followed them during that process where they were doing that. And once they had got the wardrobe to the kind of size that it was usable, not just bang full of loads of stuff, then it became really difficult to just put something in it. So that idea of just buying something because you see it and you like it, you don't want to, because then that's cluttering up this wardrobe that you've created and has become quite important to you and who you actually are.
It's great because it seems that everything is connected with self-reflection. So, okay, let's start from zero. Let's think what I own, let's review it, and then let's think what the future is going to look like, what I'm going to do. But do you think as consumers, because as you mentioned, so there's a lot of effort behind, let's say, save your wardrobe. You have to take pictures, prepare like nice scene, let's say, to have these beautifully designed images. But do you think all consumers in general, are we ready to make that effort? And let's say, okay, I'm going to reflect on my practices, I'm going to read, and then try to engage with more conscious choices to be more sustainable or more ethical consumer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think that it's one size fits all. I don't think the Save Your Wardrobe app is necessarily for everybody. And that's why I think it's really important that we have different solutions that suit different people and suit their lifestyles. I mean, let's face it, we have all sorts of demands on our time. And then thinking about the complexities of, you know, climate and sustainability adds to that. So it really does have to be embedded into your kind of everyday lifestyle. And that's what we're really trying to understand with the Save Your Wardrobe app, is how that becomes embedded in somebody's everyday practices and how they actually use that. So I think, yes, it is important for some people because they plan their outfits and they want to do that and they want the support to actually do that. One of the things that Save Your Wardrobe are very, very keen to build, and I think this requires a change in consumer mindset, and this is something they're really trying to work with at the moment, and that's around clothing longevity. So there's a lot of interest in buying more sustainably, but buying more sustainably isn't what we need to do. We need to reduce what we're buying. And the app is very much around that, where it's like, use what you have more effectively before you then think about buying something else. And then when you do need to buy something else, making sure that that item fits within the larger picture of your wardrobe, so you are going to use that effectively. So the app is very much around trying to support that. But also within that, so what they found is there's a lot of interest in more sustainable brands. But what we don't want to happen is we just switch our behavior from buying fast fashion to just buying sustainable brands without thinking about actually reducing our overall levels of consumption. So reducing our overall levels of consumption means that we have to think about clothing care, maintenance and longevity. And the app are really keen to extend their ecosystem of services. So they have that at the moment, but we're really looking at how we build that geographically where people are located in the country, and also they're users of the app internationally as well. So connecting people to those services. So the app becomes a one-stop shop really, where you can connect to if you need a tailor to take up a pair of trousers, or to get your shoes resoled, or a handbag resewn, and to make that process as smooth and straightforward as possible. But I think because we have very much got into this idea that clothing is, disposable, it's taken a bit of a mindset shift to think of buying better and increasing longevity of that clothing, because in that you don't have the novelty. In our research, we found, once people described once they've been photographed in a outfit and then tagged on Facebook, they couldn't wear it again. So we had to really kind of get away from that kind of mindset to think about, because that's very different to thinking about how can I increase the longevity of an item as long as possible and really look after that. And that means thinking about how we wash our clothing, how we use it, how we store it. And the app is very much around supporting those behaviours as well. So connecting people to services or helping them to upskill themselves if they want to be able to engage in some of those repairs themselves as well.
Yeah, I do found upcycling really rewarding. I do it myself. I try to do it regularly because it changes completely the way you see a garment, and it gives a second chance, or even a third, fourth. So it's really good.
And there's some great videos out there at the moment, on tips for darning and sewing and doing these repairs yourself.
So thank you so much, Deirdre, for this interview, let's say. I hope to hear more about future projects, and I think I'm going to start using Save Your Wardrobe app because it's very, very helpful, I think. I'm not sure if I'm going to work that much on the pictures. Don't have that much time. But thank you again for your time and for sharing your views.
Thank you. Really lovely to talk to you. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing the rest of the events. Sounds great.
Thank you.